your father, your, sound engineers, like so many different roles. And I think
Yeah.
those could be an incredible window into the scenario and situation when I'm reading it. And I was wondering how, because I think this is such a common thing for so many people, like as they grow up, their relationship with their parents either strengthens or weakens. How did this process help you heal your relationship or further or deepen your relationship with your parents of going through this process of reflecting on all of this again? Or how has that journey taken place for you through your spiritual growth?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think in so many ways, in a lot of ways, um, it's done so much of that. Even hearing the stories that my mother shared and realizing her perspective and realizing how things must have been for her during these different times, especially when she talks about kind of, choosing to have me. And, it wasn't the kind of traditional scenario when she got pregnant, and she wasn't kind of on the trajectory to marry my father. And it wasn't, it wasn't what we are told is kind of the way things are supposed to happen. It didn't happen like that. And that could have been really, really difficult for her. And surely it was. And she had to make some really hard choices. And so just hearing kind of her perspective and her story, but then still understanding that regardless, she, in essence, chose me. She chose me. That
Absolutely.
that is what that is, like things like that. Just as a daughter, you don't. I mean, of course, if you step back, of course, your parents, I guess, choose you, because once they choose to go forward, they chose you, and they're going to stick it out for good, bad, or indifferent. But as a daughter, you don't think like that. Like, you don't really think like that. And so to have those moments now on this side, and also being a mother and understanding like the weight of what that actually means, is it just deepened my respect and my love for her so much, which I don't even know how that can get any deeper, because she's literally my one and only. Like, she truly, in regards to consistency and actually being there for me for real, it's her, and that's it. But to learn more about that and her doubts and insecurities and things she had to overcome really just brought me closer to her. I think just as a woman, as a woman. So that's really cool and really powerful. And then for my father as well, we've definitely been on a deep journey to understand our relationship, and it's taken many incarnations, and it's taken many turns, and taken me many places that have had to do with anger and rage and worthlessness and many emotions, and even and even moving towards gratitude, and definitely like a deeper understanding of his journey and his difficulties and what he's had to endure and experience, and his upbringing. And he also was raised by his mother only, and he didn't really have he had a father figure in my grandfather, who my grandmother married later on, you know what I mean? But in regards to like him having a father figure, how does one learn how to be a father? What, you just born knowing how to be a father? Like, how do you know?
So
How do you
true.
know? Or how does one learn how to be a mother? Same. So it's just so deep in this kind of place of empathy and understanding, and really, as opposed to just only seeing everything from your view and your perspective. I think that's what it's given me the most, of being able to see it from multiple perspectives and multiple views. And to your point, even those intro chapters and things like that create another perspective of how to look at it and how to see it. And ultimately, that's our experience, I think, is how we see it, is the experience we have with it. So it's been really, really dope and great and beautiful. And My father and I are really in a very wonderful place and closer than we've ever been, and really able to be friends and just like humans, and without all of the extra attachments or without all the extra uh what do I want to call it? It's almost like the pictures were painted that we assume we're supposed to live up to, and then we hold each other to these images of what it's supposed to be, but we each have to create what it is. And, hey, you might not be the daddy that was in my life at 4 years old and threw me up on your shoulders and walked around and then tucked me into bed at night. That might not have been of our experience, but that doesn't mean that our experience isn't valuable and that our experience isn't special too, in the way that it was meant to unfold. So that empathy has definitely come through in a lot of ways. And I love that this book has assisted that.
Wow, that's so powerful to hear that the pictures and the visions that we, like our fiction writing brains, create of what it should look like and what it should feel like, and then you start realizing that no one has what it should feel like or look like it doesn't really exist, and that our experience is different. And what I'm hearing you say also is, when we develop the emotional skills our parents didn't have, that's when we realize how hard it is, right? Like it's almost like there's an expectation of your parents to be a certain way, but then when you try and become that yourself, you realize how hard it is to gain those qualities and those perspectives. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. That does, man.
And you're a mother now, so you must see it from that perspective again, like almost like the 180 flip of being in that situation and seeing that in your children.
It's that's definitely a mind trip. It's really interesting, and I think the biggest part for me comes back to what we talked about already with the unlearning and the just the what the truth is for you, and just really recognizing what it is that you want to bring for them. What do you want to let go of, even in yourself? Because I think that's one of my favorite things about being a parent, is that they're teaching me so much about what I want to let go of and what I no longer want to bring forth, and that is so interesting and crazy. And so it's something else.
Yeah, it's always nice hearing that about how much. I don't have kids yet. We don't have kids yet, so we haven't had that gift in our life yet. But to hear that from your perspective of how much you're learning back from them is phenomenal. And I know that my community loves hearing about how relationships form, especially partners and husbands, wives, or marriages, or partnerships of any form. And what I found fascinating was that you and your husband actually go way back. But it's funny to read that you were actually turned off by him because of how flashy he was, and the fact that he'd brag about completing a beat in 10 minutes. And by the way, I've been a big fan of his beats for a very long time. And music too. So I was kind of like, it's tough this way. So what tipped the scales in his favor? Like, what was it that allowed you to recognize that this was the person you wanted to be with?
Oh, it was so interesting. It's such a journey because, like you said, and we talk about it, I actually love the story of us in the book a lot, because it really, I think, comes through really purely as to the experience. And we've known each other for so long, since we were like 15 and 14, and we've seen each other through these different incarnations in our lives, and we've watched each other become successful without even really, we knew each other in the sense of we'd met in these different places, and we, of course, were happy for each other's success, but, it was kind of in passing in so many ways. And so I found that with him, I really was quite judgmental about him, which is something that I think we do, like, as humans. We just are super judgmental about a person, and and so I I always had this idea about what I thought that he was in my mind.
Mm.
And that particular thought that I thought that he was something that I didn't find to be something I wanted to really get to know more of, or, I thought it was, to your point, like I wrote, quite flashy, very over the top, very kind of obnoxious, ostentatious. It was completely the antithesis of who I believe I am, or who I believed I was, and just the energy that I carried. And so I was always so like, there he goes again. And like, he can't just have a fancy car. He has to have the white Phantom, right? He can't just have like a really nice chain. He has to have like 5 diamond chains. Like, it was just like so over the top and so much. So I drew these conclusions about him. And every time that I connected with him, I was always like, wow, he's so cool. Like, I didn't realize how cool he was. And I'd always be introduced to the real him, because as we do a lot, we judge each other and assume that we know something about people, and we don't. And so it wasn't until that I actually started to communicate with him or converse with him that then I was like, wow, he's quite interesting. He's like, he's always thinking about something that's so interesting. And so that it was the actual getting to know him, and really just the peeling away the layers of what I assumed, and actually getting to know the spirit of the person. And I think that when I look at it from now, and I know for a fact that the universe and God definitely knew what they were doing when they brought us together, because it's completely this, we both have what each other didn't have before us. And so there's this beautiful thing where he's taught me so much about like greatness and bigness, and being unafraid of this enormousness that we have within us. And you don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to not step into your 5 diamond chains. Now, you might express that in a different way, and you might want to express that brilliance and brightness in another way, but you don't have to be afraid to express it. You don't have to hold it back and repress it. You don't have to not want wonderful things for yourself. You don't have to be afraid of anything, not your wealth in any capacity, not the wealth of the love that you have that you want to give, not the wealth of the ideas that you have that you want to create, not the wealth financially that you want to be able to have and give and share. You do not have to hold it back. And I only held everything back until I met him. And he was a really, really big teacher to me about how to walk into my greatness and not apologize for it. And it's really deep. It's really deep and really amazing. And I'm so grateful for it. And I've also given him a sense of grounding and a sense of deepening and a sense of really looking at things from a more expressive place, or a more, intimate place, because I'm more internal and he's more external. And so it's really been so special to witness the way that we were both obviously meant to bring each other this energy. And so we complement each other so beautifully, and it continues to be that way. I'm so blessed for that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that, because I feel like in this online dating world, or social media dating world that we missed, I often find that people are judged so quickly, and we make decisions over whether we could or could not have a future with someone so instantly. And it's almost like you guys wouldn't have been together if it was just based on that initial or that initial, and then, like you're saying, like, you can see the greater reason for you come together. You can see the abundant life that you've been empowered to live for yourself through both of you coming together. And it's incredible to think it wouldn't have happened because of an initial judgment. And one of the parts I love is where you talk about this. So it says, that your husband said for years that you wouldn't take your wedding ring off even after he presented you with an upgrade. And I quote, "That's Alicia for you, less is more." And so I was like, but so it seems like you've still stayed to that. Like less is still more for you.
Yeah.
But you've been able to appreciate more, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm still who I am.
Yeah.
And I am a person that does prefer simplicity. I realize, it just feels better for me. But I also have learned to appreciate, and within that simplicity, to find that the simplicity doesn't mean I have to want nothing for myself as well. It's like a beautiful line. But so yes, there's a much more, I think, a much better balance. Although still at my heart, that's the type of woman that I am. I'm a quite simple person.
I love that. One of the big things that you see in your life that shift is your experience in Egypt. And when you returned to New York from Egypt, your whole team noticed that you changed, you shifted. And you go on to say that you started using the single most powerful word a pleaser can ever speak. And that's no, right? And I think so many of us today have a challenge with that word in so many areas of our life. Tell me what the experience was in Egypt that led to you getting that confidence. Because I think for a lot of us, it's just we're not giving ourselves the permission to say no because we don't want to let others down, because we want to be seen as good people and caring people. Tell me about the importance of using that word and how it's changed things for you.
Oh my gosh, so important. It's so important, man. And it's like, we associate so much guilt with looking out for ourselves, and I don't know why we do this. Like, we're so comfortable to make sure that we're doing all the best things and the right things for everybody else. For that, it feels like you're completely in the right, in your rightness. But when it comes to looking out for what's best for you, we are so guilt-ridden about it. And I think it's just, I am so finished and done with that. I would really like to rewrite that whole story. Wow. It is whack and it's not real. And I don't know what it is. And I don't know who told it. And I don't know if it's like women like really deal with this even more difficultly than men. I don't know. I'm not a man. I can't speak for men. All I know is whoever feels like how I feel in this place where we suddenly are racked with guilt when it has to do with protecting or taking care of yourself, I want to rewrite that narrative because it's just awful. And so, and it's totally counterintuitive and counterproductive. And it's just kind of totally stupid. And I don't even use that word. I don't like that word, but in this case, it's relevant. It's relevant in this case. And so I think that, that trip to Egypt was definitely a really big marker in my journey to start to understand what it is that felt good for me and how to build things around me that makes it, build things around me that feel right and feel good and be okay with the change that has to come naturally. Like nothing can just continue on forever and ever. It wouldn't even work. So that trip was a big part of me arriving to the place where I could finally start to say no. And that definitely took a long time and much more after that before I actually got the hang of it and before I even understood why it was so valuable and so important. But I think I started to recognize just the things that were happening in my life that I needed to let go of. And that was the beginning of me recognizing this pleasing tendency that I was carrying with me, that it was time to start shifting away from.
Yeah, it's so powerful hearing you share that. And I know a lot of people listening right now will get so much strength from that because you're right, men and women, and maybe women more, like struggle with saying no. And I think we struggle with it at work, we struggle with it in our relationships, we struggle with it in our families. There's so many places that we struggle with it, that it's such an important skill and habit to learn, and be able to become comfortable with ourselves, and making that space for ourselves. So I think you're going to give a lot of people a lot of strength hearing you talk it through and calling it stupid. I totally get where you're going with that. You say that in life we don't get what we are. Sorry, in life we don't get what we ask for. We get what we believe. And I thought that statement was so powerful when I read it. I'm going to read it again, guys, because it may sound like something you've heard before, but it's not. So listen to it carefully. In life, we don't get what we ask for. We get what we believe. And when I read that, I just thought, that's so true, because there's such an asking movement and manifesting movement, and just asking for things from universe, God, whatever anyone has a belief in. I'm intrigued by when you came to that realization, and then what you're believing right now. So how did you get to that realization, and then what are you believing right now?
Oh my gosh. How do you
Sorry, we're going there today, Alicia. I'm sorry.
It's so good. It is so good. And man, how do you, I just have seen so clearly, and even up to quite recently, that even I was operating from these places that I didn't recognize my value. And I thought that was humility.
Wow.
But I was wrong. And it's absolutely not humility to not recognize your value. It's issues with self-worth, and it's issues with, things that we all have inside of us that we definitely have to pay attention to and think about and work on and practice all the time. To this day, I have to practice saying, I deserve this. I am meant to have this special moment, and I do not have to feel like, I was doing this thing where I would, say, I don't need that. Similar to that thing that I did when Kerry told me, why do you say you know my luck? It was just a different version of it. It was like a more evolved version of it, where I was saying, no, I don't need it to be too complicated. It's cool. I'm just simple. I just need it easy, and I don't need much, just a little this and a little that. And I was telling the universe that I didn't need much. And there's a difference.
Yes.
There's a difference between, recognizing that you're content and telling the universe you don't need much. Because once again, I was blocking off the blessings. I was blocking off my potential to reach a greater greatness. And I realized, man, look how blessed I am to have reached so many beautiful plateaus and places and amazing spaces, and still I am struggling with the belief that I deserve more. And when I talk about deserving more, I'm not talking about financially deserving more, which I deserve that as well, by the way. And I really encourage us to not be afraid of financial success. I really do. I think that that's also another fallacy, that's another narrative we've thought that somehow there's something to be ashamed of by achieving, any number of things we might achieve. So but that's not what I mean. What I mean is like the greatest visions that I have yet to vision for myself, the greatest visions I've yet to envision for the planet, the greatest contributions that I have yet to actualize. All these things, if I'm telling myself I don't need much, how can I reach those unimaginable places? And so that's what I meant when I was saying that it's not the experience is what you believe, because what you believe you deserve, what you believe who you are, that's how you walk into a room, and that's how you speak to that person, and the words that you use to them, that you feel you belong there with them or you don't. And we all belong there. You know, I don't just belong there. We all belong there. And in this highest, greatest space that we have yet to imagine. Because it's that big. We might not even be able to see it yet. And that's what I want to feel. So I don't want to say any longer that I don't need much. I need the greatest version of myself that I can possibly manifest, so that I can be the greatest version of myself for the entire planet. And that is what we deserve.
So well said, so beautiful, so powerful, so amazing to hear you say that. I can resonate with it so much, because I talk so often about how I grew up in the rhetoric of I always had just enough, and I always had just enough. And it was always about just enough, which meant you never had enough because it was just enough, right? It was just. And it ended up leading to so many challenges in so many areas of my life, where you end up not realizing that there's a difference between selfishness, there's a difference between sufficiency, and then there's a difference with service. And that's what I'm hearing you say, is like selfishness is where you just want more for yourself. Sufficiency is like, I've got enough. And then there's service, where it's like, I want more for the whole planet. I want to be able to, give and serve and